on this episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists.
I think as a mentor, we oftentimes have this perception of like, we're going to show people and teach people, but you actually have to have the mindset of saying, what can I learn from others? And I learned very quickly that if you don't take care of your posture and your ergonomics, you're going to be this hygienist who's been practicing for a really long time, bitter because you're in pain. And that's besides patient interactions or culture in the office. It starts with what we can control and what we can do. Patient is more educated than I've ever seen them before, and now they're asking us questions. And now we actually have a dynamic shift. I strongly believe that people are going to come into our chairs and ask us to provide specific type of dentistry that they're seeing outside. And it is our responsibility to get ahead of the game, because after all, we're the dental professionals.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists podcast, episode number 488. I'm your host, Andrew Johnston, and thank you so much for being with us today. I had a great conversation on this episode with David Torres, and as usual, we went down a bunch of different rabbit holes. David's role right now, which we probably should have spent more time on because it's a very interesting pivot, I think, for some of you to go into if you're listening and liking this. But he's a campus recruiter for his company. And while his job is primarily to showcase his company in a great light and hopefully have some of those students who he's talking to come and work for them once they graduate, he takes his opportunity to a whole new level. He takes the opportunity to really act as sort of like a mentor to these soon-to-be new grads and help them with things like job expectations. What does social media say a dental hygienist is versus real life? What are the influencers saying versus what is real life? What technology is out there in the real world versus what's in the dental hygiene programs they're all attending. He explains the importance of communication, but of all of the things we talked about, he has an excitement for this profession that is absolutely contagious. And it's exactly what we need these soon-to-be new grads to be exposed to. So if you love this episode, if you have any questions for him, please be sure to shoot him a message. I have the links, of course, in the show notes, and he specifically asked that you all reach out to him. So be sure to give him some love. Our next few episodes coming out are also looking really good. We're going to cover LANAP, which probably not many of you know too much about. We're going to talk about some adjunctive options for periodontal therapy. So things like probiotics and lasers. We're going to talk about some fascinating new AI tools. There's just so much more that we have planned for you in the next couple of episodes. So be sure to come back and give those ones a listen. But thank you so much for being here. Enjoy this episode with David Torres.
Tale of two hygienists.
Listeners, welcome into the interview portion of the podcast. Joined today by David. David, thanks for being here today.
Of course, man. Thank you for having me. Super excited.
So I want to give the listeners a little bit of insight, kind of our history. It's interesting. I think a lot of times as we are in this dental space, we run into people in the most obscure places. And we met each other at the dental hygiene seminars back in, it was just in January, right? That was, just this year.
Yeah, it was it was exciting to see you in Orlando for sure.
Yeah. And I was like, you have an energy about you that is infectious in all of the best ways and not in the bad dental infection ways, but in all the best ways. And it's the type of personality I think that makes you successful in life. And so what I want to talk about is just a little bit about your background. Like, where have you been? You've done a lot of things in dentistry. And then I really do kind of want to focus on being a campus recruiter too, because I think that's a really fascinating part of what you do. But let's go back in history first. Let's start talking about school and what you did, kind of in your career.
Sure. Yeah. My passion in dentistry started in 2008. I was actually a dental assistant and I loved it. I loved it so much that it led me to graduate as a dental hygienist in 2012 from Miami-Dade College. And Andrew, I was so lucky. I'm still so lucky that because that's where I ended up meeting my wife. So we both graduated from the same program, same time. And since then, I got to practice in private practice. I did some temping, but eventually I found my footing in a DSO. And in that DSO, they recognize, like you said, the energy, the passion, the mindset, and they were like, "Hey, you got to be a mentor." And I was like, "Say more, tell me more. Well, how can I do? What can I do to help?" And they were like, "We really are looking for hygienists to talk to hygienists about how to level up their skills." And so I became a hygiene mentor in that DSO where I was able to really find joy in, how as a hygienist you create and you have this change with patients' lives, how you can create that change. And it's really enlightening to be able to do the same through other hygienists. So when hygienists are also able to do the same with their patients, it creates this amazing ripple effect. And in that same DSO, they were like, "Hey, how would you like to go talk to students?" And so I've been in schools all over Florida and Georgia. Those were the schools that I overlook and talking to the future of our career. And I have to tell you, it's been a lot of fun, mostly because I'm starting to notice a generational shift. But it's also very inspiring to see the future of our career and what they could be. And what I do is just talk to them about my experience in hopes that I can inspire them and motivate them and, really have their careers make it their own, if that makes sense. But I've been doing that for over a year and I've been so excited about it, man.
Man, that's awesome. We got to peel back some onions on this though. Here's my question. Okay, so you met your wife in hygiene school. You didn't know each other before. You met there.
No, man. And I mean, picture a class of like 45 students, and the last three that walked in the class was male students. And in that same class, to this day, I still talk to the professor. We all married within the class. And so, you recognize that for a potential partner, you want to be on the same page. That's the best way to do it. And so, yeah, we've been married for about 11 years now, and it's been exciting. It's been fun. We have 3 kids now, 3 boys.
Wow. So,
Mhm.
it's interesting about this is because like, even some of my best hygiene friends, we don't always agree on everything. And I'm wondering if like, is there ever a time where it's like you and your wife are like, "Hey, let's talk about periodontal disease. This is what you're wrong on. This is what I'm wrong on." And is that healthy for your relationship? Or is this something that's like, "Oh man, we need to set dentistry aside so we don't keep fighting about this stuff."
It's comical. We actually worked together for about 7 years. And for us, it was easy because you got to remember, like, we were exposed to each other from the get go as far as school. And so everything she learned, I learned. So we have more or less the same philosophy. It was when we left school that it wasn't, we weren't having alignment because she was learning some things in her private practice. I was learning some things in my private practice. And sometimes they didn't merge. But when we got to work together, it became one of those that her strengths were my weaknesses and vice versa. And so we made, if you will, a super hygienist within that practice where if we had a certain patient that we didn't vibe with or connect very well, my personality took over and I was able to service that patient. But to this day, we still talk about her after, she comes home because obviously I'm not as clinical as she is. And she asks for advice and she's like, "Hey, what do you think I should do with these things? What do you think?" And most of it is the lack of ability to get through the patient because we all hygienists do this. I honestly do believe that all hygienists want to do the best that we can for our patients, but we are capped by the patient's ability of having the proper insurance or their finances or maybe their belief system. And so where we as hygienists become frustrated is when we want to do so much more, but we can't because we're limited to our resources. And it's all a mindset shift. As soon as you start seeing the cup half full rather than half empty, that's when you can kind of break through. So the best part about our career as hygienists is that it's very unlikely that we get to change that patient's life in one appointment. The best part about it is that we get to see them at recare and again and again and again. And so we really chip away at those philosophies as you build the relationship with the patients.
I'm curious about you specifically, and then maybe how this translates to other hygienists, because it's always nice to say like, "Hey, you have this cup half full mentality," right? But it's not inherently innate for a lot of people, and it's like, is this something that you? I mean, it's already in you, and so you exude it, and then for the people that you're mentoring, the people that you're talking to, even the students, and you're like, "Hey, you need to have this positive mindset." How do you actually get them to do that? Or what are the steps that they need to take to be able to shift that in their own head?
It's a practice. I have to tell you, I feel like a lot of people, it's easier to look at the negative things. I think it's just a survival thing, right? You're in the middle of the woods, nothing's happening. You hear some funny noises. You're like, oh snap, I gotta run, right? Is as a flight or fight mentality that we all have. It's a lot more difficult to be positive than negative, just because that's in our biology. But I haven't experienced both in my career and in my relationships with my peers that being negative works out for me. I just haven't. And I've seen that the more I fight the urge to, hey, you said something like this that didn't land well, I literally have to translate it in my head to like, this is what they actually mean, right? And so it's a lot more difficult to be positive. So it is a practice. It's a discipline that to this day, every morning I wake up and it sets the tone in the first 10, 15 minutes. What am I doing that's going to shift me into that positive mindset? Just because it's so much easier to be like, oh man, like it's Monday. You know what I mean? Instead of like, it's Monday. All right. What are we going to do today? So it's not easy. And as I mentor hygienists and as I coach the students nowadays, it is very much in our control where attitude is very much a choice. And you decide, that's the fun part about it, Andrew. You can finish this conversation and be like, man, I'm gonna take on the day and I'm gonna do what I can to make it happen. But we get so caught up with wanting everything to be 100% that we forget what is essential, including on an appointment, right? We want the patients to follow through treatment, to have all the adjunctive services that we recommend because we believe that we can prevent, right? But they don't know that. Patients don't know that. They don't know what they don't know. And so we get that disconnect or that frustration where like, I just didn't close this case, or I wasn't able to do this desensitizer sealing or oral cancer screening or whatever, because you feel for the patient. But maybe just the patient's not ready with that mindset. And your job, or I believe our responsibility, is to start with ourselves. And you just control what you can control. And it's a mindset shift rather, that we have to practice that discipline.
All right, David, I want to go back to a couple of things that you said earlier. The first of them is, yeah, talking about your time as a mentor. One of the things you said that you liked the most is like seeing that joy, like, and this might be kind of going into the whole mindset conversation you were just having, but like I've seen it too. I've done this mentorship for a long time as well, and it's like you go into the thing and you can like you say one thing, and then all of a sudden, like it's like a light switch, right? They just light up, and then they're just happy after that. What are some of the things that you saw hygienists change about themselves or about the way they practice that help them find that joy or turn that light switch on so they could see again?
It's quite that's a great question, man. And honestly, the scenario that pops into my head is I want you to picture this hygienist that's been doing dentistry for over 25 years. So at this point, she is way more senior than I am, right? Like she's been doing it a lot longer than I have. And I'm her mentor. So again, going back to the mindset is like, okay, how am I supposed to mentor somebody who's been doing this a lot longer than I have? But I want you to also picture the same hygienist wearing like a splint in her wrist and being very frustrated about her career just because it takes a toll. It's very taxing on the body. And so I came in and to the practice. I was summoned by proxy for the other hygienist, but my eye just went to that. And I was like, is this going to be my future? Is this going to be other people's future? Like just the curiosity, right? And so she was in pain. She was frustrated. And quite frankly, we're talking about adapting technology that even it happens to us. And we're talking about AI, right? When I graduated, I still had film x-rays. Now it's digital and now we have AI. So things are moving fast. And so I approached her and I just asked her questions like, hey, what's the number one frustrating thing right now in your career or your job, right? And she says, I'm in pain. And I was like, okay, got it. And I was like, hey, I'm going to be around the office and I'm just going to be observing. Are you open to feedback? And she was like, yeah, of course. But she kind of made it seem like, what feedback are you going to give me, right? And I was like, fair enough. And, I was observing and Andrew, I saw her with two patients And it's just going back to the basics. If I can just record her ergonomics were way off. Her posture was way off. She had been doing it for so long that by practicing day in and day out, you forget the most important basic things that are going to compound at the end of your career. And that includes ergonomics, for example, right? And so I was like, oh, no wonder her wrist is hurting. If you've been a hygienist for a while, you have seen clinical operatories that some of them are little dungeons, like you can barely put a dental chair in there, and some of them that are like these luxury suites that is like you can do oral surgery in there. In this specific scenario, it was just a tiny little office, and so at the end of the day, I was like, hey, I noticed a couple things. I think I can help you. Do you mind terribly if I give you some feedback? And she was like, yes. And so she had this, she gave me this demeanor, like, what can you tell me now? And I was like, do you mind terribly moving aside a little bit? I'm going to move your chair. And she said, yeah, okay. Of course, if you know this, you've been in dental field, the dental chairs are very heavy. So I'm using my whole body weight to just shift the chair, what seemed like 2-3 inches away so that she could be more comfortable moving at those 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock positions. And now she has better posture. And then I told her, I was like, if you only lower down the patient a little bit, you'll be able to have more comfort, not pinching the nerve, and so on and so forth. So in that specific scenario, I really didn't do much mentorship other than like looking at it from an outside perspective, saying make those little changes. The rest of the time that I was there, she had so much buy-in in what I have to say because I physically got her out of pain, or I help her with posture to get her out of pain. So now everything else is more receptive, right? And I think as a mentor, we oftentimes have this perception of like, we're going to show people and teach people, but you actually have to have the mindset of saying, what can I learn from others? And I learned very quickly that if you don't take care of your posture and your ergonomics, you're going to be this hygienist who's been practicing for a really long time, bitter because you're in pain. And that's besides patient interactions or culture in the office. It starts with what we can control and what we can do, and being receptive and open-minded about the little possibilities that compound in the future of your career and how you can essentially have a bigger impact on a patient's life or even within yourself.
One of the reasons why I love that so much is because I think the message is, kind of across everything. It's like, you can't see what you're doing. You don't know, first of all, but you also can't see what you're doing. You do need, as tenured as you are, as good as you are statistically or whatever, you always need a second pair of eyes looking at you, and with compassion, with love, and the things that someone that wants to help you. But as maybe a little bit of a, I would say arrogant, maybe of a proud hygienist as myself. Even I need it, right? I need people looking over my shoulder, looking at my work, looking at double checking what I'm doing, giving me feedback, giving me coaching. We all need it. I want to talk a little bit about, and this might lean into this generational shift thing that you mentioned earlier. I would love to know, because you are like, you're seeing today's graduates. You've been seeing the most recent of graduates. So what are you seeing as far as the shifting of in a generational attitudes or mentalities?
So I believe, and this is my perception, the more I get to interact with students who are in their early 20s, right? Very few are in their late 20s, but early 20s. I believe that there's a certain underlying frustration once they are in the real world. And I believe that tends to happen because they have this perception, which is their truth, their reality. They have this perception that hygiene is the career it's amazing. They probably have seen these influencers on social media and saying, look how far they've made it. Look what they can do. So they're thinking that they can create the same impact in their own offices. And it could be that you may land a job where you have the doctor be around your same generation, right? And open-minded, and they're probably influencers as well. Or it could be that you land in an office that the doctor has been doing it for like 30 years and they're looking at you like, oh my goodness, what are you talking about Instagram? I have no social media, the TikTok videos, all that stuff. And so what's happening right now with this specific generation, and I can relate because I also have younger siblings, is that they're getting used to, uh, through no fault of their own, being exposed to instant gratification, right? I finished hygiene school. I want to make over six figures and I want to have a house by the beach and I want to drive an amazing car just because I have 4 weeks of PTO. Then now I can travel to Europe because that's what my friends are doing on social media. And so when the reality hits that you might not make that income, you might not have that car, you might not have those flexibility in hours, and now you have patients that are real world patients that they have their lives, they have like this frustration because I'll be honest with you, Andrew, what makes you successful is your ability to communicate with others, right? And we call that emotional intelligence, right? We call that a positive mindset. We can say what communication skills do they have that they're probably lacking or not utilizing when it comes to the real world. So I am noticed that within the first year, maybe the 6 months, if they don't see anything, I've noticed that they're like, it's not what I thought it was. And quite frankly, I feel like they feel heartbroken. That personally happened to me within the 6 months in my career, but it happened to me in a different way because back then when I graduated, I was graduating at a recession timeline where it was very difficult for me to get a job. And the jobs that I did get was the ones that nobody wanted to work at. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I landed a career that makes me feel like I'm working at a fast food restaurant with a dental license because it's just a numbers game. And I never wanted to be the provider that just saw patients by numbers and by what they can afford. I wanted to make an impact. I believe that we all want to make an impact. It might look different in you. It might look different in this generation. It might look different in the hygienist that's been practicing for 20 years. We all want to make an impact. But if we don't know what type of impact, if we don't know how we want to do that, that's when you can get frustrated. So I'm noticing that the younger generation, they want technology and it's an expectation. So if they land a job where you don't have an iTero scanner or you don't have artificial intelligence, they immediately feel discouraged because it's like, oh, this is like so like 20 years ago. I don't want this type of job. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting though, because I feel like that can't be just a dental hygiene problem as far as our profession, right? That's got to be kind of across the board where influencer culture and instantaneous, like Amazon's going to bring it to me today if I pay another dollar, but tomorrow if I get it for free, like it's still really fast anyway. That's got to be a whole shift for everybody. At the same time, the disease process and fixing disease is not instantaneous unless it's something as simple as, well, and this isn't really fixing the disease, I guess. This is just more of a reparative thing, but like cutting out decay and putting a filling or a crown on, like that is kind of instantaneous. So I'm wondering if if we're going to start seeing, the shift to go more towards dentist or dental therapist in some cases where they get that instantaneous fix of, dopamine or whatever the hit that they're looking for. We only have a couple more minutes left. I want to shift a little bit more into what you're doing when you do like your campus. Uh, I call it recruiting, but I don't know if it's necessarily recruiting or if it's, spreading the good word of positivity and joy for our profession. Like it seems like it's multifaceted. What do you actually do?
I'm glad you asked because one of the biggest things that I've seen when I go into campuses is the hesitation of like, whoa, who are you? Stranger, why should we let you talk to the students? And as soon as a program director identifies that I'm a hygienist myself too, they become more receptive. Honestly, what I do is I want to be able to bridge the gap between what we're lacking in school that quite frankly schools can afford. So for example, technology, right? Like we look at all the schools in Florida and Georgia and they're very limited to what they can teach and coach. So in the real world, we have iTero scanners, we have artificial intelligence, we have a way of communicating with the patients, we have reversing of cavities, which is Curadon. We have so many tools that we don't learn in school that I come in and I talk to the program directors and the students to say, hey, I can talk to you guys about any of this while using my experience to be able to bridge the gap of like the perception to the reality to in hopes what they can eventually make out of it. I do recruit through my organization. Obviously, my responsibility is to be able to build the DSO in a way that it resonates with the students. But ultimately, I also want them to find their dream job. And let me rephrase that actually. I don't think anybody will give you a dream job, but I think we can give you the tools and the skills and the education to be able to create your dream job. And that's with anything, right? Like you can go to any job and at the end of the day, it's a job, right? There's a lot of great things about it. And there's a lot of things that are like, man, I wish it would be different. Even with a career, Andrew, I mean, I've heard a lot of the episodes that you have. And we all carry this mindset of like, but it could be so much better, right? And we're not used to it evolving so quickly and it's time. But heck, when I graduated, we could do local anesthetics, and here we are doing local anesthetics, right? Georgia, there's a bill in Georgia where they're gonna pass lasers now, and so those things is what I like talking to students because they're gonna be the ones who is also gonna help us embrace that change, especially because they're the ones getting used to that instant gratification. So maybe they can do more unorthodox things that we're not doing to create that change. And that's what it excites me is to create that inspiration. Be like, hey guys, no pressure, but it's all of us plus you kind of secretly hoping you guys will create that change as well. You know?
Yeah. Well, and I think that they have such a powerful platform with like leveraging social media and reaching out to legislators. Like it's nothing for them. Whereas maybe some of our older generation were like, now how do we use the TikToks and the Instagrammies? And so, yeah, they're going to be absolutely amazing. And I love that you get to you're almost like more of like an ambassador for the profession. It seems like, I mean, I know you have a job to do as far as, your role at Heartland, but it seems like the gaps that we all had coming out of school where we didn't all the unknowns, you're kind of helping kind of give them at least a heads up of what that could be. I want to ask one final question. Again, you're such an excitable person, and I know you've been trying to like be more demure on this particular episode, but like in real life, you are just a force. What excites you? What makes you like so excited about the future of this profession? Is it AI? I mean, you mentioned AI several times. Curadont is something that's still not really talked about too much on kind of mainstream social media and all that kind of stuff. What is it that you think is going to be the thing that's going to be like, oh, this is great?
That's a really good question. And I believe that what's exciting me, what is exciting every single day to me is just change, man. I mean, we do plateau in certain things when it comes to our clinical skills, but our technology that's coming about and how we're integrating it for the patient. Do you know how cool it is nowadays to be able to show a patient their mouths outside of their mouths instead of a study cast? Now it's like digital, and then they kind of poke it around and they can zoom in like an iPad, and they can ask us the questions. So the best part about our career, and I believe where it's heading, is that we're gonna have so many educated patients asking us the questions. Whereas before, us like, here's how we're gonna do this, and here's why we're gonna do this. Whether it's them looking at influencers on social media, whether it's them googling their conditions, or a patient is more educated than I ever seen them before, and now they're asking us questions. And so, what is so exciting is can't think of a time in our career where it has shifted so much where now the patients are the ones seeking for our care. It was before like, hey, I'm here for my routine cleaning because it's free through my insurance and I just want that. And now we actually have a dynamic shift. It's slowly happening, but it will happen in the next 5, 10, 15 years. I strongly believe that people are going to come in to our chairs and ask us to provide specific type of dentistry that they're seeing outside. And it is our responsibility to get ahead of the game because after all, we're the dental professionals. And if you don't believe what I'm saying is true, how many of our patients are declining fluoride because they probably are thinking that it's poison because they read something on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. They're already doing it. But if we create that positive mind shift and it's like, oh, I'm so happy you are asking me about fluoride. Tell me more. Show me the article because, at the end of the day, it is my responsibility as your dental professional to give you the facts, to give you what has worked. Because, Andrew, you are coming to me for my expertise and my experience within my field. So it is my responsibility to know what's out there and how I can service you as a patient. With that said, at the end of the day, it is your mouth, it is your health. So I'm here to help you out, and I'll go as fast as you want me to go. I'll go as slow as you want me to go, but it is in your control. You're my co-pilot when it comes to your treatment. So I believe when we're able to adapt that positive mindset and we understand the patient's emotional treasure, when they ask us these questions in our chair, that's a huge amount of opportunity that we never had before. I can't think of a time where a patient has come in my chair and asked me, for example, for Invisalign or whitening because they've seen it on the social medias and saying, do you guys do this? I even do that when I was practicing with patients, taking selfies. You know how many patients go in their phone and they start recording and let me get in there and I'm over here posing for a selfie. That's great. And I think the other exciting part to that, and now you got me going because you're asking me about my passion, but I think the best part about all of this in our careers is that we are responsible for our own brand. We're in an era where we work for private practice, we're temp agencies, we are in DSOs, multiple of them. But at the end of the day, patients don't go to those to the dental chair for those brands. They go for you. So if you service a patient so well, if you make them feel so comfortable, if you can relate to them, if you understand them, they're going to refer to you as the provider. So we are our own brand. Wherever you end up practicing, we are the future of our own career, our own reputation, right? And so when I had patients just refer to me because they had that much I provided that much of an impact in their life, that's what gets me going. And I strongly believe that the future of dental hygiene students and young professionals can do the same. They just don't know that they can because they think that somebody else will give it to them. But it starts with maybe asking for referrals. It starts with as simple as saying, "Hey, Andrew, is there anything else I could have done in this appointment to make it more comfortable?" And if you tell me, "Nah, man, you were great," guess what? The next patient that's going to come in, I'm going to recreate the same thing or do something even more impactful to have fun. Maybe it's taking that selfie with the patient, or maybe spending an extra 5 minutes asking them about their day, or maybe it's just listening to their chief complain and actually focusing on that. But it starts with our own. It starts with our own brand. And it starts with our own expertise and experience. So I believe the future dentistry is going to shift so much with the perception, the negative connotation. You know how back in the day people were afraid of us? Think of the young 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds that maybe never had a cavity. What are they afraid of? The noises, maybe? That's it. But we're not having like emergency appointments. We're not having root canals. We're not having anything. And that's our responsibility. We as hygienists created that prevention for those kids once upon a time that they're now in their adulthoods and hopefully they will never know what a root canal is or a crown or an implant. They're still out there, but the dynamic and the industry is changing to the prevention. We are now the specialists and we're prevention specialists.
Man, lots of great pearls to take away from that. You got my brain thinking a little bit about, because I knew, we're advancing in technologies and things like that, but getting our patients to, talk to us and ask us for those things. And then now we actually have the solutions. Do you remember going back to what you're talking about? Like you had it wasn't a dip tank probably, but it was, the actual films. And you're trying to be like, hey, this little triangle right here? This is incipient decay. And they're like, I don't see anything. But now, like you said, they have iPads. They can zoom in, zoom out. We are living in a time that is just unprecedented. But I love how you bring humanity to dentistry. And I think that a lot of times, we can get, frustrated. We can get all these things with whether it's patients or work or whether it's the profession, whatever. And I love your perspective. I love your energy. If someone wanted to reach out and, maybe ask you a question about the episode or get some clarification, how can they find you?
Oh man, so I have Instagram, I have email. I can give you my email. My email is David, like my first name, David.T3469 @gmail.com. please reach out, email me. If you're a student in Georgia, in Florida, give me a shout. I've probably been in your school or am planning to be in your school. But even if you don't, even if you have a question about my experience or about the career, or just want to have a candid conversation like what we're having, I think we all need a little bit more of like that communication with each other, because chances are life is very seasonal, right? At the beginning of your career, you have a certain mindset. Then when we've been doing this for a decade plus, right? Then at your retirement. And so life will always take us through seasons, and it's important to feel acknowledged as a human, as a professional, because chances are sometimes we just need somebody in our to put their hands in our shoulder and saying like, hey man, I know what you're going through. Let's talk about it. Just feeling that announcement gives you more energy in your battery. And I think that's important. I think we all got to do that a little bit more.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Well, thank you for being here, man. I appreciate your time. I went a little bit over, but you've been awesome. So thanks so much.
Anytime, man. I love being able to talk about the future of dentistry.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.